In the last few weeks before Ballymore submit their planning application to RBKC, we've been out with our leaflets talking to residents, the majority of whom knew nothing about the development and were horrified. Apart from concerns about the scale and density of the development, traffic congestion, pollution, and lack of green space, one key issue still needs to be addressed: contamination. Bizarrely, I couldn't find any information on either Berkeley St William or Ballymore's websites. In fact, the only reference is on the RBKC Kensal Canalside brief. There, in tiny writing, the words potential land contamination, and that refers to the whole area marked pink. So what kind of contamination are we talking about? Well, to understand that, we have to look at the history of the site. The site was bought by the Western Gas Company in 1844, and then in 1865, the site was bought by the Gas, Light and Coke Company. By 1890, the gasworks occupied all the land to the west of Ladbroke Grove, including the site which we now know as Kensal Gasworks. Now, if we look back at the development site, you can see the old coke plant dumping grounds are directly under and around Sainsbury's. Well, this means that Project Flourish will effectively be built on a toxic waste dump. Now, the gas manufacturing process at the coke plant involved using some pretty nasty stuff. The most serious toxins were in the coal tar waste, including benzene, which is linked to cancer. The gas had to be cleaned with slaked lime containing sulfur and cyanide, which in Victorian times was simply buried underground in deep tar pits. Now, by law, developers have to clean or remediate the contaminated site before any building work can begin. But this is problematic because the very process of remediation is what causes deadly toxins to surface in the atmosphere, the point at which the developer starts digging up the contaminated soil to replace it with clean soil. Alternatively, if they use other methods which involve, say, chemicals to spray the surface of the site, this in turn can create a toxic cocktail which results in more toxic material being released into the atmosphere as gas or dust particulates, up to a radius of 5 kilometres, which could affect residents in Brent, Westminster, as well as Kensington and Chelsea. Now, children are particularly sensitive to these toxins, so this should be of concern to parents if your children go to school near the development site. The issue of contaminated gasworks sites like Southall have been widely reported in the press, but now it's becoming a national issue. The St William and the Berkeley Group, together with National Grid, are currently involved in similar developments all over the country, and the same issues are coming to light. Roy Harrison, Professor of Environmental Health at the University of Birmingham, wrote a report about contamination issues at Brighton Gasworks. He noted that some of the compounds in the contaminated soil could cause cancer, while other volatile organic compounds could even penetrate buildings, as residents in Southall experienced firsthand.
Back in the mid-2000s, when the first attempt was made to develop this contaminated land, there was a community-wide campaign, and in the end, Ealing Council agreed with us that they would not grant planning permission. However, in 2010, the then owners of the land decided to appeal directly to the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson then held a meeting at the GLA, which I attended and at which I made a number of submissions to him about the impact that this development would have on local health and on the local environment. He completely swept aside those objections. He was supremely disinterested in what the suffering would be. Boris Johnson gave the green light to this development. Berkeley took it over. They started to remediate the land in 2017. So the soil which had to be turned in order to prepare the land for building released the most horrible chemicals, some of which are carcinogenic: benzene, naphthalene, cyanide, arsenic. And it's been going into people's homes, their gardens, their front rooms, their bedrooms. And the symptoms that people have been complaining of are really serious: dizziness, coughing, chest tightness, breathing problems, nausea, sense of faintness, people having sore throats. And it's been demonstrated scientifically that some of these chemicals, which are afflicting them, have a disproportionately bad impact on people of colour. And therefore there's a racial discrimination aspect to all of this, which simply hasn't been considered properly by the statutory agency. There was a public meeting on the 10th of July in the biggest community centre that we have here in Southall, attended by about 300 ordinary people. And those people were literally shouting and screaming to Berkeley Homes, to the Environment Agency, to Public Health England, and to Ealing Council, whose representatives were lined up on a table at the front of the hall, saying to them, why aren't you listening to us when we tell you that we are slowly being poisoned by this land? And you fold your arms, you nod sympathetically, and you simply tell us it's all fine because you claim that the data that you've collected, paid for by Berkeley Homes themselves, indicates that the level of pollution in the air is acceptable.
So what happens next? Ballymore and St William have to complete a detailed risk assessment about their remediation strategy and submit that along with their planning application. So the first stage involves an on-site inspection, getting soil samples which are then sent to a lab for independent analysis. Once they have that data about the contaminants in the soil, they can identify potential remediation options. And for the final stage, they must develop a detailed strategy which has to be approved by RBKC and the Environment Agency, with environmental monitoring maintained throughout the whole process. So the Environmental Protection Act is really designed to measure air quality. It doesn't really deal with health issues caused by the toxins or the contaminants. Because of the health scares coming out of Southall, scientist Dr. Ian Mudway from Imperial College set up a study to investigate residents' exposure to chemicals from the development site. In the initial phase, his team collected around 50 samples from the homes and gardens of residents, including blood and urine samples. The results will be published in 2024. In October 2018, RBKC issued a press release following an article in The Guardian about possible contamination around Grenfell Tower. Contamination found in nearby homes and soil created a quarter-mile exclusion zone where residents had to be rehoused. So if we want to avert a similar toxic zone around Sainsbury's, are there any alternatives? Ladbroke Grove Green Space is a high-density, low-rise development based on the award-winning Unity Place scheme in Kilburn, outlined in the previous video. Crucially, this proposal would utilise a completely different approach to remediation. Based on studies coming out of the States, this is working with plants to clean up toxic soil, used in conjunction with bioremediation, a method which uses microorganisms to break down toxins in the soil. And incidentally, this is the same method that was used to remediate the 2012 Olympics Park in London. So all in all, these systems are cheaper, safer, and much more eco-friendly than the other chemical options. This plan will allow for 2,500 housing units, some of which will be 3 and 4 bedroom, providing homes for up to 5,000 residents, with a guaranteed allocation of 35% affordable housing. There's an on-site medical centre and plenty of real green space, parkland and trees. So as we approach climate Armageddon, it really is time for some fresh thinking.